Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
The views expressed by J. Michael McCoy are the views of the hosts and guests of Max World Live, and not necessarily the views of Webcast One Live, its staff, its management, the cleaning crew, Dave the electric guy, the guy who cleans the skywalk, the woman who brought in the cookies, the management staff of Hubble Real Estate, the parking lot attendant at Keck Parking, the wait staff over at Miss Kitty's, the coffee crew at Frederick's, the man in the street corner willing to work for food, Rob Spearman, Max Crabb, or anyone else of sound mind. Should you be offended, provoked, intimidated, shocked, confused, or just made to think independently, log on to MaxWorldLive.com right now. It's your voice we want to hear in Max World. And now, live from the palatial studios of Webcast One Live, your host, J. Michael McCoy.
Thank you, Michael Libby. We appreciate you and all of the listeners listening today on 99.3 KTIA and webcast1live.com. If you're listening live, we appreciate it. Our phone lines are open. We have a guest today that you may very well want to call in and ask a question of. Our guest is Matt Whitaker, a candidate for U.S. Senate. And, of course, Tom Coates in the house on this day. Michael, the handler, sitting to my left, which you won't see. And, of course, Ryan, our producer. Matt is a former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Iowa and I don't want to say probably most famous, but certainly made the news in the CTEC case. You were the one that prosecuted that.
Yes.
Or not.
Yes,
My office
prosecuted.
did.
My office prosecuted CTEC and did a lot of great cases when I was U.S. attorney.
I believe that I recall, and my wife recalls completely, that I met a young Matt Whitaker when he was a senior at Ankeny High School and was a all-stater. That would have been the fall of '87.
Right.
And then you went on to Iowa and played tight end. You were an academic Big Ten and an academic All-American.
Yeah.
And so you're just...
And a couple dollars to get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks.
Well, that's all right. And now you...
And why is Tom Coates wearing an Iowa State shirt?
I don't know. I wondered that.
That's purposeful.
What's with it?
Tom does everything on purpose.
Oh, I know why. Because he got it for free. It was free.
Because my wife, after the show is over, is picking me up, and we're going up to the Iowa State-Texas basketball game tonight. So
okay, good.
This is the one time I wear the shirt when we go up to one of the games. So
that'll be
this
fun.
will be like the second or third game, and the Cyclone fans are glad it's basketball season.
Well, and what a great arena they play in. And
yeah.
When Hilton Magic is going, it is a lot of fun. I've been up there for some games. Been up there for a few games that I was cheering for the other team.
I'll bet.
It's still a great environment.
Well, you also played basketball and baseball in high school.
I did, and ran track. I was a four-sport letterman my senior year at Ankeny, and I loved competition, and I loved competing at any sport. I was one of those kids that always had a bat and a ball and a glove, and
sure,
and was always wanting to play catch. And I had an older brother that sort of put me under his wing and took me around. And
was he a good ball player also?
Yeah, he ended up playing baseball at Iowa.
Really?
And was a really good baseball player, hit over 500.
Wow.
His junior and senior. Yeah, he was.
Well, now, geographically, you would have been close to Iowa State. Were you ever a follower of Iowa State sports when you were growing up?
I was, and my mom was a Iowa State grad. She got her master's degree from there, and really it was pretty significant to be that close to Iowa State. And my best friend in high school was a guy named Chris Peterson, who ended up going and playing quarterback for Iowa State. Mm-hmm. And Dennis Gibson, who was before me at Ankeny, went up to Iowa State. So there was a lot of folks and a lot of connections. I had a lot of classmates growing up.
Did they recruit you?
They did. And the challenge was, and I'm sure all Cyclone fans always understand this when I explain it, but I had Jim Walden come to me and recruit me, and Hayden Fry come to me and recruit me, and It was, if you remember the fall of '87, that was after Hartlieb to Cook, and they beat Ohio State in the season, and it was just, there was no other choice but to go to the University of Iowa if Coach Fry offered you a scholarship. And so December 2nd, he showed up at my house, him and Bill Snyder, who was recruiting me as a position coach, and the rest is history. I got there in the fall of '88, made the travel squad as a freshman. Played in one game against Kansas State, ruined my red shirt as a defensive end, and then redshirted my second year, switched to tight end, and had a great career. Played on the last Rose Bowl team, and really just had a great time, and was around wonderful football minds. I mean, Brett Bielema, who's the coach at Arkansas now, came in as freshman with me, defensive ends together. He went and was a defensive lineman, and then I went to be a tight end. The Stoops brothers were all there. You know, and you had just an incredible coaching tree and coaching talent that was at the University of Iowa.
We could. There's others. The Wisconsin coach. There's others.
Yeah, Alvarez had just left, and Bill, like I said, Bill Snyder was still down at Kansas State. Was there? In fact, his son Sean Snyder was my freshman roommate in the dorms in Slater Hall.
Now, is Hayden still alive? That's not rhetorical.
Yep.
He did have cancer some years back.
He did. He had prostate cancer.
Are you waving me off for a
No,
break?
I'm just waiting for you boys to get done with your self-gratification so we can talk politics.
But it's so much more enjoyable to talk football.
It is. Oh, okay. Well, feel free. Go ahead. Just let me know when I can start the interview.
No, go ahead, Mac.
Why should I vote for you? I mean, all I hear about is corruption. All I hear about is that everybody that goes to Washington just ends up being a fat cat. And why are you going to make any difference over anybody? And I don't care who it is. Anybody. Bruce Braley, Tom Harkin, Grassley, whoever.
Right. Well, I'm the only small business owner that's running for the United States Senate. I mean, I own several small businesses. We've talked about those before. And so I have a unique perspective as to what these regulations coming out of Washington, D.C. do. I'm one of the candidates in this race that's taken a term limit pledge. I've said that if I'm lucky enough to be elected as the next U.S. Senator from Iowa, that I will serve 12 years, 2 terms. I have no desire to become a career politician. I want to live under the laws that I've passed and come back. But I'm not going to really come back because I'm going to continue to raise my family in Iowa and live in Iowa. And I'm going to follow the example of Senator Grassley and go at all 99 counties every year, have a town hall and talk to folks. And I have a lot of people come up to me and say, Matt, how do we know that we really like what you are saying, but how do we know? How can we hold you accountable? I said, I'm going to be in your neighborhoods and at the kids' sports and at the school events, and you can tell me how I'm doing.
Yeah, because
I'm going to be accountable to the people.
Iowans got burned on that term limit promise with Boswell.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen so many upset people who supported that man in the beginning, including some Republicans.
Yeah, well, they
because
thought
he said, I'm a different kind of guy.
They thought he was a kind of a yellow dog Democrat, and he professed faith, and they thought he was a different guy. And
yeah.
I think you mean blue dog, but
well, I think yellow dog might be closer. After it all was said and done.
But I'm baiting you a little bit, because I love you. You're my brother. All
right, well, I'm not taking the bait, but okay, go ahead.
But they say that something happens to people when they get in Washington. Right. It's that scent of I'll call it sin. And it's lust, and it's greed, and it's sloth, and it's just all those things that the government does through the accuser to good men and women who go to Washington.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to resist that. I mean, I have been married for 20 years. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ as my Savior, and I'm going to take those values and beliefs and hold firm against that. And again, I'm not going there to be somebody.
Yeah.
I'm going there to do something to get this thing back on track, to get the spending under control, to quit growing these debts, and to really bring some fiscal sanity to Washington, D.C. And listen, there's going to have to be some really tough choices made, and I'm going to join the new voices that are making these tough choices and are really trying to get this house back in order.
Yeah, because it's going to hurt, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's going to hurt.
One of the points that some people make, Matt, I'm not saying I agree with it, but one of the points that they make is that given the type of system that we have, that a rookie senator has very little impact, that you have to be there long enough to work through the seniority process to actually get where eventually you're a senior member of a committee or the chair of a committee, and that while laudable, perhaps a 2-term pledge is somewhat naive given the type of seniority system that exists in the U.S. Senate. What's your response to that?
Well, as someone that has, that 25 years ago when I graduated from Ankeny High School, had Governor Branstad, Senator Grassley, and Senator Harkin, I can understand why some folks would say that. But in 1995, one rookie senator would have passed a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. And, one rookie senator could have stopped Obamacare and the Republican side in the U.S. Senate. So one rookie senator can make a huge difference and an impactful difference and really have changed the course of our country and our federal government. And so I, sort of this influence and power thing, if that's the kind of senator that folks want, there are others in this race that have chosen not to take a term limit pledge. I think it's very important that folks understand that I want to return to the citizen legislator model that rejects that power and the corruption that comes with it and says that I want to stand up, I want to serve, but I don't want to do it for the rest of my life.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm not saying that was somewhat a devil's advocate question, but I think that is part of what's part of the thing. What are you going to say, Mac?
I'm going to tell you to put your headphones on because we have a distinguished caller.
I'm not sure that's the case, but we'll do so.
Frank, you're live in Mac's World. How you doing today, Frank?
Mr. Distinguished here.
Yes.
Listen, Matt.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the elephant in the room, and I'm not regarding anybody in the studio.
Okay, well, I'm about 290 pounds now. This campaign is not treating me well. So I got to decide whether I'm going to 300 and...
Too many rubber chickens or what?
Well, we have some distinct segments of the Republican Party. We have the establishment wing, we have the libertarian wing, and we have the conservative wing. And I want to tell you, as a Bible-thumping right-wing conservative, and I will speak for myself and many other of my friends who are of the same ilk, conservatives can do without Republicans, but Republicans can't do without conservatives.
Conservatives can do without Republicans, but Republicans can't do without conservatives.
Yeah, because the way I see it, and some of my others as I speak, we win either way. Because if you keep poking, and I don't refer to you, I'm speaking
the
of the
proverbial
party.
you.
Speaking of the party, the proverbial you. If the Republican Party keeps pushing and poking the conservatives in the eye, if the Karl Roves of the world keep doing this to us, we are just as happy to sit home because we win either way. Because if you vote the way we think the conservative and the party ought to go, we're happy and things go well. If you don't, the world just goes to crap, and we think that's just going to hasten the Lord's coming anyway. So from our perspective, it's a win-win. So I would hope when you have some talks and some meetings with the people in the party that you could convey this message to them, because we're getting tired of being taken for granted. We're tired of being, poked in the eye. The threat has been made now that the establishment wing is going to start primarying Tea Party people, because they didn't. Apparently, Karl Rove and some of them didn't like it that the Tea Party put up some candidates that he didn't approve of. So, just a thought for you guys to dwell upon.
Did you have a question, or do you just... You're pontificating, Frank.
That's not unusual, but usually there's at least a question hidden in there, Frank. This didn't have it.
The question is what? In other words, what are you going to do? What is the establishment going to do for the libertarian and the conservative parts of the party to keep these people from sitting home?
All right, and Frank, we appreciate you calling. Of course, you can hear Frank's own show, Frankly Speaking Live, 6:30 here on webcast1live.com on Fridays.
Well,
you want to answer that now or after a break?
Let's go. We can go to a break and then and come back. I have several thoughts, as you would imagine.
So, what would you hear his question at being?
Well, first of all, I'm not an establishment Republican.
Okay,
and folks like Frank and others need to realize that, and myself as a conservative, that sometimes we're played for the fool when candidates are put up and they say that they're the conservative or that they are a conservative, and yet every policy they stand for is not conservative. It's just the typical establishment Washington Republican go along to get along, or just a little worse than a little better than the Democrats.
All right, Matt Whitaker will finish that answer, and we'll continue our conversation this afternoon live with candidate U.S. Senate Matt Whitaker, Tom Coates, and myself here live on KTIA, Iowa.
America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hey, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. I want to tell you about our brand new time slot. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the same night, Tuesdays. We now follow Ed Fallon and the Fallon Forum on webcast1live.com. I want to tell you a little bit about our show. Our show is focused on local, state, and national, and sometimes international politics. We like to keep people updated and informed. We also have very interesting guests. So please join us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
If you choose to obey the power of sin, it leads to death. If you choose to obey obedience, it leads to righteousness.
Forgiveness is just the beginning of life in Christ. God wants us to live for Him now.
And because of Jesus Christ, the gospel was preached, and you and I are blessed today because of Abraham. Did you know that? We're blessed.
Experience Truth, 99.3 FM.
And it's just crazy. All right, we're back 21 minutes after the hour. Our special guest is candidate for United States Senator Matt Whitaker. And for what it's worth, and for those of you that have listened to me for a while or a long time, you know that if I have a bias, I put it forward. And unless Matt just does something just stupid, ridiculous, I'm voting for him. I mean, I've known Matt for a very long time, and I have a lot of respect for him. I think the way he handled the CTEC case, which was just, and I don't want to talk about the CTEC case, but it really ripped apart our community. You know, you had a guy like Archie Brooks, who I've always enjoyed and always respected, get caught in the middle of that, and you were a class act the way you handled that, and I appreciate that. And if you're a sports person, then you know Matt from Ankeny High School or Iowa. If you're a business person, you know him as a small business person. But he's trying to take the seat that Tom Harkin is vacating. You got a primary, and there's, what, 5 of you?
There's actually 6 declared candidates, and the filing deadline is March 14th, I believe.
Okay.
And so we would expect that it'll be 6 or less when we get there. And but yeah, there's
do you want a handicap? Because
no, I don't.
Well, give us at least a thumbnail of your opposition at the primary level.
Right. Well, I mean, you have Sam Clovis, who's from Sioux City.
And we had Sam on 2 weeks ago.
Yep, Sam's from Sioux City, and he's a PhD college professor. Also had a radio talk show up in Sioux City. And, he's always enjoyable to be around and talk about conservative ideals with. You have State Senator Joni Ernst, who's up at the Capitol now and in the minority in the state Senate with my one of my lawyers at my firm, Jack Whitver. Jack's a good friend, Iowa Stater, and Joni's really nice, and I've enjoyed getting to know her. I didn't know her before this campaign started, and then
must have put a crimp in her campaigning to also sit up there during the legislature season. Now
I don't. You'd have to ask her.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then we have Mark Jacobs, who's he was the CEO of Reliant Energy down in Houston, Texas, and then he retired and moved here and is running for the Senate. And
he's supposed to be our guest in 2 weeks.
Yep. And then you got a couple gentlemen from Ames, Paul Lundy. Paul is a Harvard law grad. He before Gansky won in '94 against Smith, Paul was our party's nominee and came up short against Smith in '92.
Okay. All right.
And then you have a guy named Scott Shaban, who was the sales manager at one of the car dealers up in Ames, and he decided to raise his hand and jump in, and so that's those are the 6 candidates that have announced and that have been at the forums and debates.
All right, let's assume for a second that you run a good race, your numbers look good at this point, that you are the lone survivor, the movie that got so much acclaim.
It's a great
recently.
movie, by the way. I just saw it 2 weekends ago.
Read the book, enjoyed the movie.
Yep.
Let's assume you're the lone survivor out of the pack here, and that you rise up and you're the candidate against Bruce Braley. What's your strategy at this point? How do you define him, and how do you defeat him?
Well, my strategy right now is to win the primary.
I understand, but I mean, I'm looking ahead.
And when is the primary? June
3rd.
Okay.
It's the first Tuesday in June.
Okay.
As it relates to Bruce Braley, if you've seen one of the clips we put out, it was the AFP debate in my closing, and it talked about how Bruce Braley has been for every policy that's bad for American families and for moms and dads sitting around their kitchen table trying to make ends meet. Bruce Braley voted for stimulus, bailout, TARP, cash for clunkers, cap and trade, and then the pinnacle of progressive orthodoxy is Obamacare. And so he has been trying to harm our economy and harm small businesses with a centralized, uniform, big government regulatory scheme that is bad for people that want to get jobs, or people that want better jobs, or folks that want to feed their families. And so, a lot of it's going to be drawing the clear distinction of myself being a small business owner, a serial entrepreneur, somebody that's been active and involved in the community and his church and everything else, versus somebody that's part of the problem in Washington, D.C. and has voted for all these policies that are bad for our country.
Well, I like the fact that you keep mentioning that you're a small business owner. I don't think the average person would know that about you. I think they would be impressed when they find out that you're not just an attorney, not just, and I say just, but I mean the fact that you've got the scope and the perspective of a small business owner, and you know how to create jobs, and you know how to assess a situation. And I'm glad to hear you twice so far now. You've mentioned that you're a small business owner. I think that does help distinguish you from much of the rest of this pack.
Right, and it's not something I've come to lately. I mean, I bought a trailer manufacturing company in 2002, and I've owned that for 12 years now. I've owned the daycare up in Ankeny for 11 years.
And that's a big daycare, I understand.
It is.
Not a small mom and pop operation.
Yeah, we have 60 employees, and it's run by professional managers that are really good. And we're every day we're working hard. I mean, I want to tell, I talk about overregulation, and we saw this at the daycare. We had a federal regulation from Washington, D.C. come out that said that the cribs had to be able to pass a certain test, or they weren't certified. And we didn't know whether our cribs could pass it or not. We thought they could, but the manufacturer had gone out of business, and so we couldn't go back to the manufacturer and get the certification. And so it was going to cost us probably $6,000 or $7,000 to send them to a lab to get one tested, and then it would be ruined because he would have to destroy it. And so we determined that we would spend $8,000 on all new cribs because of that federal regulation. And it wasn't because any of our kids were unsafe or otherwise. And we want to do right. Listen, we knew we had to be certified because the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. said this is the mandatory regulation you have to pass. But it just is, and I'm seeing that everywhere I go. I mean, I talked to a farm couple up in northwest Iowa that has to have maternity care coverage, even though they're in their 60s and they're well beyond having children.
Yeah.
And I talked to
I'm just curious, the crib manufacturer that you had to buy the cribs from, was it owned by a friend of Michelle Obama's?
I don't know, but there had to be a total boom for crib manufacturing. And that's, and if you think about it, to some extent, that's kind of an example of this administration thinking that they're stimulating the economy by passing regulations that require compliance.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're seeing it in every industry. I see it in banking. I own part of a local bank, and I'm on the board of directors. And we see, Dodd-Frank and what it's doing to the local community banks, forcing them to consolidate. And we see it in farming. And it's just this idea that somehow it's a way to compete in our economy now is to have a really good compliance department. And that was never intended to be the way it is. And you have to spread that compliance department across sales. And as a small business owner, I understand it. I mean, this is not some pot of money that you reach into. I mean, this is coming out of raises you can give to employees, buying a new piece of equipment.
Well, you wait
even
till you
taking
get
your family out to dinner. I mean, it really is.
Well, you wait till you get the CFPB fully locked in. They just recently got their Cordray, their properly inserted. The recess appointment was bogus.
Right.
And so when they went with the nuclear option against the Republicans in the Senate, that's when they were able to get Cordray in. That is all-encompassing on financial institutions, and they are not accountable. I mean, they have intentionally, because of the, what's the lady's name from Massachusetts that was a mentor to Barack Obama. Now she sits in the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, I can sure picture her.
Can't think of her name, but she set it up so that most of those, when you get an outfit that's out of control like the IRS, you can cut back their funding, and that was done. Right. It comes right through the Treasury. You're not going to be able to get control unless something fundamentally changes. That was one of the things the Republicans said. We're not going to approve any new director until we get control of this. We do not like an uncontrollable, out of control, unaccountable entity like the CFPB. That one, I think, is yet to be fully heard from, and that can be real scary, too.
Right. And we're just seeing this administration as they continue to implement their progressive worldview. And they got a lot accomplished in 2009 and 2010 when they had control
Elizabeth Warren, by the way.
Elizabeth Warren, you're right. And what we're seeing is, a federal government that continues to expand and grow. I mean, I was just talking to a gentleman today that the coal-fired power plants, existing coal-fired power plants, are going to have new regulations in June.
As if they didn't have enough burden already. Right. There've been so many of them, about 100 of them shut down in this country.
No, and this, I mean, we can't. There's not enough, sort of windmills and
the cost,
tax benefits.
A kilowatt hour produced under coal is less than a nickel. It costs about 8 cents for natural gas right now. Wind, even with the subsidy from the federal government, which is significant, is still over 10 cents. Right. So it's over twice as expensive as coal, and our coal in this country is relatively clean. Now,
clean and plentiful.
The irony is that the coal in China, which is opening up one a week over there, is extremely dirty. They've got the kind of coal, apparently, that we used to have in Iowa here, this soft, very much sulfurous type of coal.
Right.
And it's killing. They would actually like to have our coal over there so they could clean up some of their air, and the Obama administration is refusing to allow that to happen. They are giving $500 million to a Solyndra. Say nothing of the solar. I mean, if the wind is a bit of a boondoggle, the solar is really a boondoggle. Without federal subsidies, it would go away. Right. And yet they want to kill off coal, and they don't want nuclear. Nuclear is the other one that generates energy.
It's carbon-free.
Yes, carbon-free in an efficient and cost-effective fashion. They don't want that.
Right.
This whole global warming thing, Matt. Now the new
climate change.
The whole climate change. That's the Obama playbook right now. John Kerry's going around the world talking about how we need to do more to take care of the global warming or the climate change that's happening. Your opinion and your position on the reality and what really should happen, if anything, in regards to climate change?
Well, the reality is that, sort of government regulations in the United States that don't apply to places like China, you mentioned, is going to have no impact if there even is global climate change.
16% of greenhouse gas are produced in this country. So when we shut them all off, the most rapidly growing areas are China and India, and we have no apparent... Right. And the irony is that they're gearing up to do even more of the dirty coal-fired manufacturing of wind and solar parts and production to ship back to us so we can cut back a little bit on ours, and they're ramping up there. So, I mean, it's counterproductive. But again, your position, what would you take as a U.S. Senator? Is this something that's even worth discussing, or what would you do with it?
It seems to me that any regulatory scheme which tries to address this is going to have the unintended consequence, but the known consequence of strangling our economy even more and causing the next generation who is soon to graduate to have a hard time finding a good-paying job. And I don't know why we'd want to handcuff our nation's economy with really we don't know if even if we somehow regulated carbon, and I am against it. I'm against cap and trade. I'm against.
And they couldn't pass it even when they controlled the House and Senate. So they're doing it regulatory. Their environments are being controlled by their regulators.
Yeah. But the broader thing on that is this bureaucracy, which is permanent and it's invasive, and it has really taken over the policy making from Congress.
Matt Whitaker, he's a candidate for United States Senate. He's with us today, along with Tom Coates. I'm J. Michael McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. Love my job. Couldn't do it without you. Right here on 99.3 KTIA, powered by webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I am administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going, though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Minutes before the top of the hour at Salem Radio Network News. And after that, Michael Mudloff with True Blue from Westkirk Presbyterian Church. Tomorrow, Reich Plaketz is here, the nominated Gospel Radio Host of the Year. I can't believe that Reich got that. He was nominated for Gospel Music Radio Host of the Year from the Gospel Music Association. So very proud of Reich. All right, Matt Whitaker is here, candidate for U.S. Senate, and you've got some interesting poll numbers that just came out today.
Well, this just came out, and it was done by The Economist, which is a respected entity, and I don't think I've ever seen anything that maybe under Richard Nixon we would have seen a number like this, but 71% of Obama voters regret their vote. I mean, even 55% of the Democrats that voted for him regret it. Now, it doesn't automatically, Matt, transfer into support for Romney. In fact, their support for Romney is still somewhat tepid. But they said that if the election were held today, according to their poll results, Romney wins by about 3 million votes.
Wow.
But, I mean, 80% of whites, 100% of Hispanics, 84% of women, I mean, big numbers, and it's to me the extent. I knew there'd be some buyer's remorse, Matt, but the extent of this poll is astounding. What's your reaction?
Yeah,
to that?
I've never seen a poll like that has such a dramatic turnaround. And listen, as a conservative and as a Republican, obviously it's well known that I didn't support Mitt Romney in the caucuses, but at the same time, I knew that President Obama and his agenda would be bad and continue to be bad for Americans, for those looking for jobs, and for the mom and dad sitting around the kitchen table trying to figure out how to make ends meet. So I wouldn't be surprised that a lot of folks that now that we're sort of back into the second term of Obama, that they do have some regret in supporting him and his really inability to get this economy to take off.
Before we leave the subject of Obama and go to what Mac's going to ask you about the next subject, typically a president is the top administrator. The idea to come out of a business, as you're talking about, makes some sense because you learn how to be an administrator running a business. You do get that with a governor as well. Mm-hmm. I think some of our better presidents all through recent history anyway have come out of that mold. Typically, the U.S. Senate is not a great place to pick a U.S. senator. To
pick a president.
To pick a president, and Obama never had any administration experience of any kind. He was never involved in business. He was a U.S. senator for a very little while. He was a community organizer. He was an attorney. It should not surprise anyone, should it, Matt, that he turns out to be an increasing failure at almost all levels as our president.
No, and what you see, and I totally agree with you on the governor executive piece. I think that governors do make better presidents. They have the experience of running an administration and knowing how to make the trains run on time and execute the laws. Listen, President Obama is what he held himself out to be. I mean, he's transforming our government into a sort of centralized, uniform federal system. It's as a constitutional conservative, that's what I work against and want to stand up against every day, because I mean this is this kind of one size fits all federal solution to all our problems is not what we were set up to do. We were supposed to be set up with states that are the laboratories of innovation. We saw that with some of the things that were accomplished in the Clinton administration with the welfare to work and what happened in Wisconsin and other states. And we just need to follow that model because, and it just is against what our founding fathers set up as a constitutional republic.
Would you have an early favorite for the 2016 presidential race?
No, I don't have any idea who's in it. Obviously, previously I supported Governor Rick Perry out of Texas. If he decides to run again, I mean, I like him a lot. I got to know him personally. His record in Texas is hard to argue with, and the economic success that they've had down there through a light regulatory, low tax system, and
that's
so.
right.
But
Scott,
otherwise,
Scott
I mean,
Walker's success in Wisconsin would argue along those same lines.
really like Scott Walker as well. I mean, again, I have a sort of a bias towards governors and their experience.
Matt Whitaker is our guest today. He's a candidate for the United States Senate, the seat that Tom Harkin will vacate. By the way, are you going to have the Whitaker steak fry then if you're elected?
Well, I do like steaks, so I don't know why I wouldn't. We'll have to do it in Ankeny, though.
Yeah, there you go. One of the big things that's coming on the horizon that a lot of people don't know much about is called Common Core. And so do me a favor. Talk to me like I'm a 6-year-old. I mean, you've got kids. I want you to explain to me what Common Core is as if I had no concept of what you were speaking of.
Okay. Well, it's pretty simple. The Republican governors, not the National Governors Association, together with the group that is all the state education heads, so like our Department of Education head would have joined together to come up with a uniform curriculum. And it was essentially through the Race to the Top stimulus money, if you remember that, which Iowa did not get, states were required to sign on to adopt this Common Core curriculum, even though when they signed the Memorandum of Understanding, it didn't even exist. And the Common Core curriculum is a progressive idea, which has a uniform curriculum across all 50 states. Iowa, my understanding is Common Core and Iowa Core have been combined now. The SAT and ACT are going to be adjusted to test for the Common Core. And it's all that stuff that teaches kids not rote memorization like we learned the math tables and the division and multiplication, but kind of really it almost takes the parents out of being able to teach their kids because it's more they believe, and again, this is an experiment on our kids. They believe that it's somehow, and it's right now it's in math and English primarily, but it's going to be in the other subject matters as well, and it's insidious.
They deal with phonics. Is phonics, or is it distinct? Is phonics distinct? I've always felt like phonics was the building block advantage that the English language enjoyed, and when they've at times gone against phonics and away from it, I thought we put ourselves at a disadvantage. Is phonics in Common Core, or is it not?
Yeah, the most exposure I've had to it is in the math arena. But what I've seen and the folks I've talked to, and I went to a informational session last week down at the Holiday Inn by the airport, where they probably had 50, 60 people there to learn more about it, and some national experts, is it really takes, it accelerates this teaching to the test. It allows sort of the creators of the curriculum to be able to push it out nationally, and some of the examples are quite frightening as to what is in that core curriculum. Both from a language arts perspective and from a math perspective, and it really encourages things like teamwork and consensus building and sort of the soft skills, and it really boils down to kind of this idea of it's more about workforce development. They take calculus out of the high school students would not take calculus under this core curriculum, and it really It does not allow kids to be creative or be individuals or allow teachers to teach, from what I can tell, and it's here, and that's the frightening thing for me is nobody voted for it. The U.S. Senate and House weren't involved because it was this consortium of the states, and then it was implemented really with an MOU signed by Governor Culver, and our legislature never voted on it. And that, to me, and guess what? Local school boards can't control it because in order to be accredited, they have to use the state's curriculum. I mean, it's insidious, and I mean, I'm going everywhere I can talking about this because I just think it's an experiment on our kids that has not been fully vetted.
When we come back, the final question: to finally eliminate this debt, what pain are we going to feel? That's coming up next with Matt Whitaker on KTIA, Iowa. Psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places, especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
10 minutes before the top, Salem Radio Network news, and then Michael Mudloff from Westkirk Presbyterian Church with True Blue. I'm J. Michael McCoy along with Tom Coates and Ryan producing today. Our special guest is candidate for United States Senator Matt Whitaker. When we start talking about the debt and how big it is, and it goes over our heads. We can't imagine it, and I don't know about you, but I just want to put my head in the sand and say, okay, they'll take care of it. But
they don't.
Yeah, they don't.
They don't. And in fact, in 2000, it was $5.6 trillion. It's 3 times that now under both Republicans and Democrats. When President Obama took over, it was at $10 trillion. It's now 17.2 and on the way to 18, 19. I don't know. How much can they grow it by 2015?
And that isn't even the biggest part of this when you're starting to talk about the unfunded entitlements. You know these things backwards and forwards, Matt, but the 17, 18 $trillion is really just the tip of the iceberg.
Sure.
Because the unfunded entitlements.
Those are debts, not commitments.
Yeah, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, now Obamacare takes us out to 85 to 100 trillion by some estimates in the not too distant future. And so the debt problem is the 800-pound gorilla, and it's not fully in the corner. It's coming out more and more all the time. If we had any kind of reasonable interest rates, the servicing of the debt would be killing us right now, wouldn't it?
It would. Correct. I mean, we see a 200 basis points increase in Treasury yields, and it's going to put a significant impact. I think debt service is the 6th largest line item in the federal budget right now, and if we see an increase, that could gobble up even more. And but we just can't continue. I mean, this is, and you uniquely understand this. You see families get into a similar situation where they just keep asking for more capacity on their credit card with really no hope of paying it off. And I just, we got to make some tough choices, and it's going to have to really be a situation where we put politics on the side and we think about what we're doing to our nation and our future, and we're just going to be in hock here to countries like Japan and China, and hopefully they'll keep loaning us money, but at some point in time, you got to pay the piper.
Yeah, and if let me go into fantasy land for a minute, and maybe it's not fantasy. Does China call us up one day and say the notes are due? You've got 30 days to pay us off, or we're coming in and we're taking, or what? I mean, what?
Well, I mean,
what's the consequence?
Yeah, it's not callable debt in that sense, but it is their willingness to loan us more money or let us refinance our debt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and ultimately it comes down to those when they're having the treasury auctions, and whether the bids start coming in lower, which means the yield will be higher, and we see a real interest rate catastrophe on some of our short-term debt.
But Matt, what we've seen in this thing called quantitative easing, and again, this is very, very.
It's one of my favorite subjects to talk about.
One of the reasons that the quantitative easing has come around is that they want to continue to so-called quote stimulate the economy, which I think we can look at the Japanese model and we find out after 2 decades that hadn't worked too well. But if the foreigners were really that anxious to buy our debt instruments, we wouldn't need the quantitative easing because they would be buying instead. Since they're not, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury have hooked up.
They're monetizing.
Now they're tapering, but we're still. What's the number now? We're down to $65
billion per month.
Yes,
it was up to 85.
85.
And somehow going from 85 to 65 is a taper.
Yes,
that's not really a taper.
No.
I mean, a taper would be sort of taking away the punch bowl. But no, we're
in the stock market,
uncharted territory where every other country that has followed this path, we know what happens to them.
Exactly.
And we somehow believe we can defy gravity with this one, and it really concerns me. The Federal Reserve and the fiat currency in general really concerns me.
Well, so what's the pain that I'm going to feel on Cedar Crest Lane in Little Clive, Iowa?
Mm-hmm.
What's the pain of this?
Listen, I can't predict how this story ends, or I'm in the wrong business, because I would be taking some stock market and bond market gambles. But I mean, the long story short is we have to have fiscal sanity. We have to get back to a balanced budget, whether that's growing the top line or reducing spending. We have to bring this thing back in balance. We had it in the 90s, which is everybody agrees was a really good economy. And it's all related. And that's what, as I go around the state and I talk to folks, it's not just talking about debt and deficits. It's not just talking about jobs and the economy. It's not just talking about taxes and overregulation, but it's all related. And that's what they don't understand. That's what our elected officials in Washington, D.C. don't understand, that until we get this regulatory burden off of small business owners, until we take the tax burden and lessen it, and until we get the debt and deficits under control, we won't have significant economic growth, because it is all interrelated. And it boils down to, if I'm going to be a small business owner and grow and expand, I'm not sure in this environment I want to take that risk. Because I'm not gonna get the benefit that allows me to take that risk. And then you layer on top of Dodd-Frank and the banking regulations and qualified mortgages and ability to repay. And I mean, it boils down to it is a wet blanket. Obamacare. I mean, it is all related.
Quantitative easing money, the trillions of dollars been produced, have pretty much been mainlined in the stock market. I think one of the things Obama brags about is the way the stock market's holding up so well. I think it's an artificial, and I think we could see a blow-off in this thing. It looked like we were going to get a top, and actually I was welcoming it. It looks like it might go into a blow-off a hyperbolic situation, and end up with a 29 style crash. It would not surprise me to see this thing come crashing down. The stock market may be the bellwether as it was in 29, because we've got some real problems that are not being addressed, and you've just laid them out.
Well, and the other thing is that we need to understand that our economy is dynamic and cannot be centrally managed, and is not centrally managed by the Federal Reserve. They are experimenting. I mean, they are experimenting with extraordinary things, and I'm concerned that quantitative easing is just another federal program that, as Reagan promised us, is as close to eternal life as we can get.
Last question, 60 seconds. Why does your personal relationship with Jesus Christ make you a good candidate for the Senate?
Well, I as a Christian and a Bible-believing Christian, my relationship with Jesus, I know that I am redeemed. It is through His grace that I am saved. And that gives me great comfort to know that. I know that it's not from my works, but through what He did for me. And, I pray on a daily basis. This campaign has literally brought me to my knees on many occasions. And without the comfort of being a Christian and a believer, I'm not sure I could have made it.
Matt Whitaker, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you very much. You're always welcome here. Tom, thanks for coming in today. Handler Michael, who has been silent, but deadly, I'm sure, if he had the chance. We appreciate you being here. Ryan, thanks for producing. And I'm J. Michael McCoy, and I appreciate you listening to this program. You're always welcome to call me or contact me or write me or whatever you want to do. Brand new website, macmccoy.com. I've taken all the websites and put them into one, and you can contact me off of that. Mac, M-A-C, McCoy, M-C-K-O-Y.com. Until I see you again, do me just one favor, would you? Please? Just one. Just pray.